The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Quirky Dog Podcast, inspired by some of the quirkiest dogs you can ever imagine and the owners who love them. This podcast is brought to you by the quirky couple themselves, Scott and Jess Williams. Their aim is to educate and entertain. Here's Scott and Jess.
Welcome, guys, and happy Wednesday. Today, we are going to talk about when to say no. But first, we're going to start with the Quirky Tip of the Day. All right, our Quirky Tip of the Day is sponsored by Viagen Pets. And I do want to note that a lot of people have been asking, if I do end up cloning my dog, how long is it going to take? Well, it's going to take the same time as the gestation period and, the nursing process of any other puppy, that's being born. That's just how it works. It's a real process. It's a real puppy. So between 60 and 65 days, it'll be growing in the mom's stomach. Once it's born, it's going to need to be with the mom for about 56 days, and then that clone puppy can come home to you. Our quirky tip is, even if your dog has zero aggression, we want you to condition it to a muzzle. Train the muzzle as an exercise, as a behavior. It's a great way to work dogs through something that's a little bit uncomfortable, make them feel braver about the world. And you never know when the aggression could pop up. It could be the nicest dog in the world. If it has a lot of pain in its rear leg one day, it's nice that a dog understands what a muzzle is before you need it. So condition your dog to a muzzle. So you came up with this topic. And when Scott says to me, "Oh, I got a podcast topic," I instantly put my guard up. Who knows where we're going to head? And he goes, when to say no. And I thought it was great. I think it's a great thing to explore. There's a lot of conflict in the dog world about even if you should say no to your dogs at any point, and will you ruin your relationship with your dogs if they hear no, and this whole situation. So we came up with some examples here today, but we basically just want to say that no, you don't want to be sitting there saying no 100 times a day, especially to your puppy. Everything shouldn't be no. But there are going to be certain instances where your dog hears no, you interrupt the behavior and you mean it, and hopefully that makes an impact for your dog.
Sure. And there's a lot of trainers and a few methodologies out there that don't want you to ever say no to your dog. But the no cue or the verbal no is just as important as the yes.
Yeah.
And everybody's pushing yes, yes, yes. Dog, no matter what they do, yes, that's great. We love everything you're doing. They also need to know when you don't like what they're doing. And they should know what no means. You should train them what no means. If you're saying no, but they don't know what that means, it's not necessarily helping the situation.
Yeah, and we have the type of relationship with our dogs. I was thinking about this today that I can say nah, or I can say their name. I can Miss Bug or Whittlebop. Like I can just say something, and they're like, "Oh, okay, I should check myself. Mom probably doesn't want me to be doing this." We're talking about no in a situation where like the dog is digging up your brand new garden bed, and you never want the dog to do that again. Or the dog. I think it came to be the podcast topic came to Scott when we heard from a client of ours saying, the dog dragged me across the road to see another dog, and then before I knew it, it had this other dog pinned on the ground. Like that would be a really good time to, as the dog's going after another dog, no, like you're interrupting, you're being loud, you're making an impact. There are certain times when dogs should hear no, and that we hope that it does make an impact for you, or for the dog at least.
Yeah, I was reading an old dog training book the other day. Jess and I have hundreds anyway, of these dog training books that go back. Some of them are as old as the 40s and 50s. But I was reading one from the 80s. It was very extensive on dog obedience, for AKC obedience competitions. And it was really, I did most everything in this book. It kind of confirmed the way I train, that I'm not a complete hack and some people say, oh, that's old school training. It's very effective training. The dogs are happy. But he talked about when to introduce the word no. And it was interesting because it's a way where the dog can really understand it. It's not this big punitive thing. But when he teaches the dog to sit means sit until I either release you from the sit or we go into a heel, another behavior. But you don't just sit and then just get up. So that's when this guy took the opportunity to teach no. So you tell the dog sit, the dog gets up. As soon as the dog gets up, no, puts the dog back in the sit. So right there, the dog is learning, oh, no is, I shouldn't have done that. And that's the way he starts to introduce this negative marker within the obedience training. So it's not just when all hell is broke loose and you're yelling no as the dog drags you across the street, but you teach it when the dog is not overstimulated, and you're teaching it as a way to communicate, I don't want you to do that. And then, of course, the positive marker, yes, if you're going to be using yes for I liked what you did. Good job.
Yeah, and a lot of people are yes, no throughout their whole training session, and that isn't as much about what this podcast is. Like, it's not so much the hot and cold game and all this. Some people train that way and it works great for them, but there are times when you want to make sure your dog knows that you're displeased. I would say one of those times is if you see your dog in the middle of counter surfing. They could be taking a piece of bread off the counter and it couldn't be a big deal, but we're speaking from experience here. One time, Jimmy got a half an avocado off the kitchen counter. We didn't know for weeks. He was obstructed with an avocado pit. It was a big to-do. Like, there's going to be a point where they take a, turkey leg off the counter and there's bones in it and it can injure them. So to me, counter surfing, when you're catching them in the act or you see them going up to put their paws on the counter, that is a great time to say no. Potty training. I am never going to sit there and all of a sudden watch a dog, start sniffing and circling and then go to squat or go to poop. And I'm just going to sit there and be like, oh, well, that's not great. Like, I'll say no. And then, yes, I will get the dog and take the dog outside. But that is a time when I will be saying no, whether it's one of our puppies that we're raising, whether it's a client dog. And it's not just puppies. Adults have house training issues as well. That would be a time that I would 100% always say no as well, in addition to counter surfing. Teeth. If we're talking about putting teeth on you, and really in any regard, even if it's just like
or
mouthing
grabbing the sleeve of your sweatshirt.
Yeah, grabbing the sleeve of a sweatshirt. Any like aggressive acts where the dog is actually coming and like putting some pressure and being like, I want you to back off. I would say no in that instance. I want to have a zero tolerance policy for your teeth touching any part of my body or any part of anything that I'm wearing or anyone else's body or their clothing. Like, these are just basic examples of when you shouldn't be thinking, oh, is it okay to say no? Is it not? It's just a reflex. No, like, we're not going to do this. And the dog's learning that isn't something that you like. These are quick ways to communicate with the dog, and it's effective. And the dogs need this type of communication.
Yeah, and you have to have some presence when you say it.
Yeah.
And your tone is everything. Because just saying the word no, that doesn't mean anything to them. They have to know that, you want them to pause and think, oh, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be doing that.
And I have not even my, vocal presence. Obviously, I'm quite loud wherever I'm speaking from, but my body presence. Normally, I'm getting up, clapping, like scurrying over to them, like making sure they know I'm not thrilled with what they're doing, and this isn't something that I want to see repeated. I want to make an impact. And it's not just so I can control the dog in every way, shape, or form. I want the dog to be as safe as possible. And it is not safe if a dog is, stealing stuff off the counter, digging in garden beds, swallowing mulch. Like, these things aren't safe. We need the dogs to understand, like, there are rules here and you need to intervene and be able to stop them at certain points.
And I will say that, when I say no to a dog, I'm also very prepared to almost simultaneously stop what it is that they're doing. I'm not, if a dog is, I had a dog come up to me the other day, a brand new client, and the dog was on leash. The dog comes and jumps right on me when I came in the house. And they said, this is what he does to everybody. We were told to turn our back and count to 3 and all kinds of passive ways of denying this dog attention. And the dog will and they say after about 4 or 5 minutes, the dog stops jumping. I said, well, the dog isn't obviously learning anything if they keep doing it every time, someone comes in the house. So when the dog jumped on me, I took the leash, I said no, and I pulled the dog's face right up to my face, and I said no. And the dog just looked at me, but I didn't let the dog get back down on the floor. I just kept him there, and after a few moments, then all of a sudden he's like trying to get away from me. And I just kept him there for an extra 3 seconds, so that it was uncomfortable for him. He's like, oh, shit. And then he got off and he sat, and I said, good boy. And then I backed up and patted my chest, and he came right up and sat at my feet, didn't jump again, because he understood I didn't want him to do that.
Yeah, and it depends on the dog, and how you make an impact with individual dogs varies, and you'll know your dog best. But you have to communicate to your dog, and you have to have a method to communicate with your dog when something is unacceptable and when you don't ever want to see that behavior again. And if you have a large breed that's jumping on other people, and you have an elderly mother and something, that is a situation that you don't want to see repeated again. All right, let's go to break super quick, and when we get back, we're going to talk about no just a little bit more.
Want to keep up with all the latest from the Quirky Dog podcast like me and Murphy here? Then make sure you head on over to the YouTube channel and subscribe Or if you prefer to listen to the madness, go on over to iTunes or Spotify and follow the Quirky Dog Podcast. And hey, while you're there, leave a rating and review and let them know what you think of the show. Until then, keep it quirky.
Okay, so for those of you out there that we may have offended and you may be thinking, this is crazy, I can't even believe they're instructing the public
I hope we
to say...
offended somebody.
We always do, but I can't believe that they're instructing the public to say no. No is a basic form of communication. It's consent, in a sexual situation. It's the way you communicate with children.
Lack of consent.
No, all of these things. Like this is part of the way that we communicate as humans. Would you like a refill on your Coke? Yes or no? Like this is just basic communication. So when we take this and we act like, oh, you're being way too harsh by, saying no to a dog and you're ruining your relationship and you're breaking this. This is a word that has been used in our society, and it's also a word that kind of like transcends many languages. Like a lot of people understand no. Like this is very clear to people. So it's important to think that if you're, grappling with this concept of, oh, should I say no and when should I say no and if I shouldn't, if instinctually you want to go up to your dog and say no and clap your hands in his face and interrupt whatever behavior they're doing, you're not wrong. And don't overthink that situation. This is basic communication that dogs can also understand. And, mothers can't communicate with puppies, but mothers are saying no in many different ways as puppies are, growing up.
Oh, they're communicating.
They're biting them too hard. They're, doing the wrong thing. They're getting too rough with their sibling. They're communicating in a lot of ways, and that's their animal form of no. Our human form of no can be verbal, and it's an important tool to have. And we maybe have said no to our dogs, like maybe we'll say no to one of our dogs once a week at this point.
Yeah, your dogs could use a little more no.
but they understand what we mean when we go to say it. It makes sense to them. It's a way that we communicate that everybody's very clear, oh, mom didn't like that, versus like I was saying, being, more casual, more colloquial, like just saying their name under my breath, like, hey, what are you doing? Like, Jim, back it up a little bit, versus no. No means like, don't do it. That's wrong. I think if Jimmy was going to mark on a tree and I said no, he would not go lift his leg. He would think, oh, she doesn't want me to do that. I need to stop. I shouldn't pee here. Like, this is just a form of communication that our dogs understand based on our history of how we've raised them and how we live with them. And we want to make sure that this is a form of communication that you have in your own households as well.
Yeah, and I was taught this early on. I don't remember if I learned it from a trainer or just from experience, but a lot of people have like 15 different words that all mean no. And it's much easier for the dog to just have one word that means stop what you're doing. A lot of people say off, get down, leave it. They got 5, 6, 7 things that mean really stop what you're doing. And so if you find yourself compelled to say no to your dog more than 5 times a week, then that's a training problem. You need to start training your dog, because it's like a kid. I tell people, you get a kid that's just crawling. They're, say, 8 months. Now they're just flying, crawling all over the house, and they're getting into this, getting into that. If you told them no and corrected them for all of their curiosity, you'd just be going around yelling at your kid, this little curious little kid all the time, which makes no sense. So people baby-proof everything in the house so that the kid doesn't get hurt. They don't eat poison out from under the sink because they're curious. And untrained dogs are like that too quite often. It's not, they could be anxious, and there's a multitude of reasons why they're acting crazy. But a young dog is just curious and impulsive and instinctive, and they're just doing all kinds of stupid crap. That doesn't mean you go around yelling no at them all day long. You start training them and teaching them what to do so that they understand when you say no, it's because they shouldn't be doing that, but there are things they can be doing. And it's not just about teaching a non-compatible behavior, which is something that I do also, but you shouldn't have to always be getting them to do something else so that they're not doing that, if that makes sense to you. It's like you can put a dog on a bed, go get on your bed, because they're getting into this, getting into that. But then they got to live on the bed all the time, because you're just taking this, okay, if they're on the bed, they won't get in the trash. Teach them to leave the trash alone. Yeah. Then they can have more freedom in the house. They can be house dogs. Yeah, and Scott's example of the baby, I was going to bring that up with puppies. If you're feeling like you're saying no to your puppy multiple times a day or multiple times an hour or anything else, you need to manage your puppy better. They're puppies. They're going to grab the shoelaces. They're going to be, pulling this off the shelves. They're going to be maybe having an accident to potty. There's going to be a lot of things that go on. You have to manage your life differently. Maybe you wear shoes without shoelaces for a little bit. Maybe you baby puppy proof the house, like Scott's talking about
called baby-proofing the
Or
house.
get a pen.
Get a pen. Do something so the puppy can be successful rather than you're squashing its every curiosity and its every interest by saying, no, don't
Just
do this.
because I was raised that way doesn't mean that all the puppies...
There's fallout and too much no. Let's just use Scott as an example.
No, I just had a new client started with him last night. He's got this really cool little pit bull puppy that's about 3 months old. And he had this puppy just like loose in the house with him. And the puppy was naturally getting into everything it shouldn't be doing. And I said, Jesus, get a pen. He didn't know what a pen was. I said, get an X pen, get a Petco, get this thing 4 foot high. And I went to see him last week for the initial consult. Last night I go over to the first class. He's got the pen set up. He's like, life is so good. He's like, this is great. He goes, if I'm taking a shower, I'm doing this, the puppy's in the pen. If I'm in the living room, I can have the puppy loose with me. He's letting the puppy drag a leash around. But then when he can't have eyes on the puppy's in the pen.
Yeah.
And life is good.
And he's not running behind the puppy saying no left and right.
Yeah.
Because you are creating a relationship with a new rescue, an adult dog that came into your house that's a rehome, a new puppy, whatever else. Those, first few weeks, those first few months, it's a foundational period. You don't want to just be squashing every little thing. You want to be giving the dog or the puppy opportunity to, I want you to do this. I want you to enjoy this. I want you to run around your whole pen and play with all your toys in the pen that are approved and the floor that you can't rip up and everything else. I want you to enjoy that, and you can't fail. We're not always, wanting the dog to fail and telling them no, but there are going to be certain circumstances where you say no, it means something, and you're glad that you have that in your tool bag, because this has been a topic that over the past, I'd say 2 to 3 years has kind of bubbled up and escalated within dog training a little bit, and it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand why now we are like super bad dog owners or, very unprofessional trainers if we use the word no, or we're instructing other people no. No is a basic form of communication that we have used for hundreds and thousands of years, and that we're going to be continuing to use. No is okay. And dogs having a solid no helps you in the long run. It helps them know, no pun intended, that you mean it. You don't want this to happen. You don't want to see it again. And in many instances, it's for the safety of them that they understand it. But regardless what it is, have 5 to 7 things where you're like, yeah, I would definitely say no in this instance. And oh yeah, my dog definitely understands no in that instance. And if you don't have this, start building it up. Scott's example of the sit from the book is great. Dog gets up, just very calmly, no. Dog goes to go out the door first. If you have door behavior, dog gets up, close the door, no, fix the dog. These are all basic ways to communicate that the dog will understand and that you will be happy that you have this in your repertoire.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, when you started saying that, I forgot what I was going to talk about. I had something in mind, but it's just normal stuff, and I don't have anything to add right this second. Tell me what else.
This is life with my husband.
Yeah. Are we podcasting? Where am I?
We're there, and then we're not there, and it's fine. We just move on. I think that it is a topic that is worth investigating. It's a process.
Well, it should be part of your communication with your dog.
Yes, and it's a process that, if you've been told, oh, this is incorrect and you should never say this and you're going to break your relationship and everything else, it's just not true. It's not the case. If a dog goes and, slams on a glass door when somebody comes to, deliver you a package or whatever, I'm going to say no there. That dog could maybe fly through the glass door. I don't ever want to see that again. Maybe there's a more hardwood door, a thicker door there normally, and then the glass door was there. I want the dog to know, absolutely not. Don't ever do that. I don't want to see that. If the dog's in the car and it's, riding and you have the window open, which we've advised, we don't want you to have your dog loose riding with the window open. If they look like they're going to jump out the freaking window, I would say no. Yes, you're going to roll the window up probably too, but there's ways that you can prevent things by communicating with the dog rather than just thinking, oh, well, I don't want to squash his spirit and, I want him to be a free chicken. No, when the dog's safety is at stake, and we're talking about slamming through a glass door or being splattered on the street or eating something off the counter that can harm them, no is completely and utterly fine to say.
Yeah, what I was thinking before I lost my train of thought there was, just like with kids, they have to understand that you're serious when you tell them no, and there's no exceptions, and they're going to be taken aback for a second there, but then you move on. There is not the shaming and browbeating and, oh, you're like with kids, where that's when it becomes this much bigger thing than it needed to be, where they think, oh, my family doesn't love me anymore. You did no, and you made a mistake. Don't do that again. Okay, and we move on. It's not personal. And dogs are great like that. They just move on quick, and they learn super quick. If you're like, hey, don't do that. No, like, okay, and then let's go have some fun. Let's go do something else. And they're learning what they can do, what they can't do, and you're giving them you're creating these boundaries every time you interact with your dog, and a type of lifestyle that you want for you and your dog. A good example is with puppies when they have those little pin teeth they grab your hand, you're going to be bleeding. They're just like little pins, and they just sink them into your hand. That's a no. Don't do that. You don't go get a toy and then, oh, okay, let me get the toy now that you bit my hand so you can play with the toy, which I hear all the time from people. But there are certain things you don't want that dog doing. Now, I tell people, get the toy before you interact with the dog if you don't want them biting your hand. Give them the toy first. That way you don't have to have them bite your hand first and then reward them with that. But there's certain things that you need to train them what's acceptable and what's not acceptable right from 8 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, they're being dogs and they're being little wild creatures. Just like kids, when they go to daycare, they bite each other. Nobody wants to talk about it. But I can remember getting bite reports. Your son was bit today in daycare.
My godson's brother.
It happens.
Will bited it again.
Yeah, they're little friggin' animals.
Yeah. And, Scott's point about the browbeating, this is a good place to end. Browbeating for kids, yes. Like, let's not make it more traumatic that something happened, there was an incident, now we're going to talk about it for the next 2 hours. Do not come home and see trash all over your house and then bring the dog back to the trash can and expect them to understand that there was a problem that happened 2 hours ago that you weren't there for. If there's a potty on the floor, do not now then go and bring your dog over there and no. If you miss the moment, you miss the moment. But if you're in the moment, that's when you use your no. And we're giving you full liberty to say no. Try it out. Let us know how it goes. We're all about it.
I want you to call us and say no. I want to hear it.
I tell no to Scott a lot. All right,
and
guys.
she browbeats me.
Yeah.
I get both. And it still doesn't work.
Do as I say, not as I do. All right, you guys, have a great week. Thank you so much for joining us here this Wednesday. We will see you next Wednesday. And in the meantime, keep it quirky. Bye, guys. Thanks.
See ya.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.